Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I'm the king, and welcome back to the channel. Welcome on in, everybody, to my theory of what the Chapter 17 killer is going to be. Now, we made a video on this a little bit earlier, but we basically reacted to the teaser that we received for Dead by Daylight's Chapter 17. If you guys haven't seen it, I'll play it right now for you guys. So there you go. You guys have officially seen it, and now I'm about to jump on into a pretty large theory of kind of the lore and who the new character could be, and you know what they could actually do and why I think so. It's gonna be really crazy. This is gonna be a fantastic theory. Before we jump on into this, however, I need your help, guys. We are on a race with Polyester to hit 100,000 subscribers by the end of the year. And the race is going pretty good, but I still need your help. Over 60% of you guys are not subscribed to the channel. So guys, please consider subscribing down below. And if you think you're subbed, please double check, because sometimes YouTube unsubscribes you, and we really want to get ahead on this race and beat Polyester on something. Because guess what? We lost our bet. We lost our bet again. We always make bets with Polyester. We lost again. I told him that we're not going to get any teasers, and here we are. So obviously, as a lot of people have already speculated, it's clear that the person that we're seeing in that teaser is the Alchemist. And we can clearly see that he is also transforming, so it solely means that he's more than likely to be the next killer. And we don't know exactly what he's transforming into. I think that he's transforming into a werewolf, as a lot of people have been speculating, and we will talk about that in a bit, but I want to give you some more backstory at first. And the reason we know that it is actually the Alchemist, it's because if you remember what we have on screen right here, Tome 1 Awakening, we have the hunger and the memories of the Alchemist. And basically, we will play everything so you guys can refresh your memory, but long story short, he uses his vials to collect nectar from flowers, and he uses this to experiment on things, and he eventually uses it on himself. And if you go back to the teaser that we received today, you can clearly hear at the opening of the clip that he is injecting himself, he's using it, and then he's basically throwing the vial away, and you can hear the bottle crush. And if you look at his shadow, you can see that he's turning into this creature. What that creature is, we're going to talk about in a second. For now, we are going to go over every piece of bit and lore, and then I'm going to give you guys my theory after that. So let's jump on into all of these memories. Here's the first one. Keep them in mind because they're going to be very significant.
He moves through the death and decay of the void. He doesn't remember his name. Everything's a blur. He feels pain in his stomach, in his arms, in his veins. He needs to find one of those flowers. The nectar, the sweet serum that gives strength. Strength for what? He remembers. The killers. Experimenting on them. Why? Why was he experimenting on them? He doesn't remember. He caused a lot of suffering, but he doesn't feel remorse. He doesn't even know if he should feel remorse. He doesn't feel anything but an ache in the pit of his stomach for power.
So there you go. Keep the first line in mind. He moves through the death and decay of the void. Alright, let's listen to the second one now.
He has flashes of the doctor, his screams, his agony, turning the tables on him, experimenting on him like he had done with so many others. Where? Not here. Somewhere else. Another world. All of these survivors, marooned from other worlds. How does he know this? He doesn't remember. He remembers the experiments. What was he trying to understand? The nectar? The serum? The right dose? The right dose. To use without hurting himself. Too late.
There you go. There is the second part of it. Now, let's carry on. A lot of useful information here. Keep in mind of using the right dose and using too much and hurting himself and it being too late. Here's the next one.
He feels the hunger. Not for food or drink, not for talk or fun. For a flower, a single flower, for serum. He knows the entity is watching him. He knows it, feels it inside his bones. He doesn't want to be snatched for another trial, to suffer or cause suffering, and to what end? The great horrible mystery of it all. He wants to understand this place. He does. But he senses that to know, to really know, would drive him Mad. Madness. That's what this place is. The embodiment of madness. He doesn't want to be pulled into another trial. He wants to return home. He must return home. That's why he was studying the serum. It gave him insight. Insight to what? He doesn't remember.
There we go. There is the third part of that. Now this one is pretty interesting as well. We'll talk about that in a second. Here's the fourth one.
He doesn't even remember where home is. He only remembers the void. Hundreds, maybe thousands of discarded survivors. Not dead, not alive, something else. Alive but dead inside. Burnt, emotionless, useless to the entity. He remembers. He remembers rising from the void, finding a flower. Had this flower been his salvation? Had the flower been his way out? He falls to his knees and shouts at the abyss, and the abyss answers with silence. The silence is so deafening it hurts. He buckles over, climbs to his knees. He needs serum.
That's important as well. Now remember, he is rising from the void here, all right? He remembers rising from the void. Here's the fifth one, the last one.
He doesn't know where he is. He sees things like tentacles reaching out for him from the fog, and he knows they're not real. None of it is. He's losing his mind if he hasn't lost it already. His eyes play tricks on him. He sees giant, nameless creatures looming over him. Doesn't matter. They're not real. None of it is. His hunger confuses him, oppresses him. He'd do anything for that feeling again. Anything. Even return to the trials. He would. He'd rip survivors and killers apart, limb from limb, for that feeling again. He begins to mumble words. A promise. One flower, and I will do anything.
There we go. The last one. Now we have a video, so let's take a look at that. And there you go. That is pretty much the end of the entire Alchemist story. And at the end, we've seen what is to be the next killer. Now, before we jump on into the section where I talk about him possibly being a werewolf or what he actually could be, I want to talk a little bit more about this lore and the significance behind the lore. And Polyester has made a very wonderful theory on this a very long time ago when we first received this, and when we were speculating for Chapter 15, we thought the Alchemist was going to be the next killer. However, it was not. Now it looks like it's time for the Alchemist to be the killer or to have some relevancy with this chapter. And his interpretation was basically that, you know, he was a survivor, he lost all hope, he made a deal with the entity to become a killer, which for the most part makes sense. And as for who the Alchemist is, in Polly's explanation, he said that it could be either Benedict or it could be Viggo. He went over more so with Viggo and him reading his own journals and finding things out. Now, I have a little bit more of a different approach to this theory. When I initially heard everything, I just completely figured it from a different way. And it's because I think that these memories, even though they clearly seem to be in order, are not actually in order. I don't think this is going in condescending order, and I think that this is the middle entry of it. And I'll tell you why. If we go to number 2, we'll start from number 1. It clearly shows that he's moving through the death and the decay of the void, and he doesn't remember anything at all. Everything is a blur, but he's slowly starting to remember things, and he knows that he needs nectar. And he's trying to figure out why does he need nectar? And then if we go over to the, where was it? The fourth one, I believe. he is basically like, or the fifth one I should say, he's starving for nectar. He needs nectar. And it's clear that, you know, he's addicted to this thing. And as we know, this being used on some of the killers, it gives them, you know, unreasonable power. It makes them, you know, form differently. It makes them mutate. It changes them, you know, and it's like this really high and intoxicating drug that comes from a flower. And if we take a look at the second one, it shows that he has been experimenting on all of these killers, researching this serum for a couple of things. The first thing that he was looking for was a way home. And we know that because it says he just wants to go home. He just wants to go home, but he doesn't remember home. That's why he was researching the flower. And we can see that he, after using the serum on all of the killers, all of those subjects, he was trying to find the right amount of dose to use on himself in order to gain more knowledge and to learn more about the realm of the entity. And we know that if he did this without the serum, as he said, he would go mad. I'm not sure where it was, but as we heard, it's an embodiment of madness. It says it right here. So my takeaway from this was that he was casted as a survivor. He goes ahead and he starts experimenting on everything. You know, he doesn't want to go to another trial, as it clearly says. He doesn't want to be snatched away. He doesn't want to suffer. He wants to go home. So he starts using this serum after he realizes the benefits that it has, because clearly using it on killers, it makes him super powerful, it makes him super strong, you know, it makes him more intellectual. So using a certain amount on dose of him would make him be able to research more about the entity, understand the entity, and understand how to get home, how to escape the trials permanently. And it seems to me, at least my interpretation, that he does this, he starts using small amounts of this, and he manages to escape. But upon escaping, he is already past the point where he has lost all of hope, he is mad, and he's addicted to this serum. And that's what we see in the first one of him moving through the death and decay of the void. And the only thing that he remembers is the serum. And the only reason he remembers the serum is because he's addicted to it. And that's why we see in the last one, where I loop it back to Polyester's theory, he makes a promise, which is basically his obligation, that he doesn't care. He'll kill any killer, he'll kill any survivor, he just wants the serum. So clearly, strong addiction towards it. So this can be interpreted the way that I think it is, where he used this and that's how he got addicted to it in the first place, and eventually he, you know, went back, which we're seeing now, as a killer in order to basically get pumped up on this serum. Or it could be that, you know, he was just experimenting with it and then he cut a deal with the entity to basically not be casted out as a human that has no more hope, come back into the trials again, except being a killer this time. So two interpretations that go on there. We'll probably get more insight to it when this chapter actually comes out, and maybe we can see it in the tome or something like that. And I spoke about this on my Patreon as well, on what Dead by Daylight is doing here. They're making a overarching story for people to care more about the overarching story rather than just bits and pieces of their favorite characters, for us to get more invested into it and really feel more with the game. And especially at a time like this where we have some of the highest peaks in Dead by Daylight, and now we have everybody together, you know, we have crossplay and everything like that. Putting out a killer like this is such a smart move, because now everybody's going to be invested into the storyline, and you're always going to come back for more, similar to like the Call of Duty franchise. Except with the Call of Duty franchise, they were so far ahead in production that they had to make such a complex story in order to cater for the things that they did, just to make it have sense. And that's why we had alternate timelines and universes and things like that. At least with this, it is not super duper complicated, and the most we know about is like Vigo, Benedict, the Observer, Alex, a couple of people, and of course the survivors in the trials now. So what this story basically is telling us, it's showing us insight about the entity, about the Alchemist. It shows us that the entity throws away survivors when it sucks them dry of hope, because that's what it feeds on. It feeds on your hope and continuously puts you to the trials. It shows us that we had smarter survivors. There's also the theory that this is actually Vigo, and Vigo found his own journal, went back in and started to do more research, and eventually, you know, whatever the case may have been, started to use these flowers, got addicted, and then made that deal. That is also a possibility where he's just, managed to escape the trial, come back in for whatever reason, and then gets addicted to the flower. There's Polly's theory as well. Then there's my theory where I think that he escaped the trial and used the flowers in order to do that. But upon coming out, he was already gone. And that's why we see him, pull out the flower and go back in. Those are just the theories. Which takes us to our next part of this video, the next section on what is this killer? What exactly can this killer be? And a lot of people initially, when, given this and, hearing the serum going on in, everybody went straight away to Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And the rundown of this is that, this is a scientist, also an alchemist, who messes with potions and creates and transforms himself into a man without conscience, which is essentially what we're seeing here with the Alchemist. He transforms into this being that, is non-human-like, and a lot of people are going for werewolf. It could be a werewolf. I don't think it's going to be exactly a werewolf, but more of just a very mutated person that, has long teeth, long hair, long claws, maybe walks with a hunchback and it's really big. And he just goes around with the only thing of doing good in his trials in order to get paid with serum. So we might see a lot of serum pouring out of him. We might even see ripped up clothes of a scientist type of look. And then we'll be able to confirm if it is Vigo or if it's anything else like that. But it definitely does make sense of this whole trip of going on into insanity, becoming this weird creature, and then, going around just without unconsciously just doing whatever you're told to do in order to get more of what you want. Because that's the only thing that you remember. And that really does seem to be the case with the Alchemist. And we're going to have to wait and see. As for the map, as we know, we didn't really see anything in the coding that indicates that we will be getting a map for this chapter. And because of that, a lot of people were like, maybe we're going to get the graphical update with that. That's the theory that I made as well, saying that the graphical update's probably going to come out in the PTP, or it's probably going to come out after the PTP, unless this chapter is absolutely huge somehow and they add in a whole brand new feature that will supplement for a map, which, they definitely could do. It's the 4th year. You never know what to expect. We got crossplay and now we're getting so much more. So that is a possibility. And upon very, very close looking at the map at the background, it seems to have a lot of correlation with the Crotus Pren Asylum. And this basically could be, us just getting updated graphics. And it's just the asylum that he's on, or maybe it's a variation to a map that we already have. I tried to go ahead and look on the asylum to try to compare it. And they look pretty similar, but it's difficult to 100% say if it is the same, considering that the grass and the walls and everything is different. And the argument can be made that just because it is a trailer, the graphics are better, which, again, we can say that is true because we've seen with the Death Slinger coming out, Dead Dog Saloon looked absolutely amazing. Still looks great in game, but definitely not to the same aesthetic level. So we'll have to wait and see for the map section whenever the PTB is announced and comes out. But that essentially is my theory. I think that what this killer is going to be is obviously the Alchemist, who is now, unconsciously going around serving the entity, just trying to get more flowers. And he wouldn't necessarily be a werewolf, but he wouldn't be himself. He'll be this big mutated kind of creature. And we know what it does to the killers and what it does to a normal person. And, the fur that we see on the back and everywhere could represent either a werewolf or just his, hair growing like we've seen on the Huntress's cosmetic. She was just a normal person and she got all, weird and furry. So it definitely can happen with the serum. But at last, we're going to have to wait and see. That is my theory. And, there's a lot of things that I'm trying to string together here. I don't really know much about the Alchemist. I'm trying to put his lore all together. We'll eventually see when he does come out. Or maybe it's just, again, something that they're just hinting towards. Think about when we receive the spirit. We didn't originally think that it was going to be the spirit. We thought it was going to be her father that cut her up that's going to be the killer and not the spirit. And it ended up being the spirit. So maybe the alchemist goes around and the entity is like, no, not anymore. And he gives the serum to someone else. We don't know. But ladies and gentlemen, that is going to wrap it up for this video. If you did enjoy, please consider leaving a like down below. Again, we're on the race with Polyester to hit 100k subs by the end of the year, and you guys have been absolutely killing it. So thank you guys so much for the support. I hope you guys have been enjoying these theories. We're going to be making a little bit more, talking about a little bit more stuff about this new chapter up until the release date. So make sure you are subscribed for some more daily Dead by Daylight content. And as always, I'm the King. I tip my crown to you guys, and we'll see you.